So I didn't have anybody join today to talk about the cloud assignment. Hopefully that means that there are no questions and you guys understand what's going on with it. But it is possible that that was because it was a bad meeting time, or maybe you didn't have quite enough advance notice. So I wanted to make a short video and just go ahead and talk about the cloud assignment. And that way, if you weren't quite sure about it, maybe this video will help, and you could always email me if you still had any questions after watching this. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll come in here in D2L. This is week 1. So I go to the week 1 folder, and the cloud assignment kind of tells you what I'm looking for here. So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is going to be, I wrote down all the stuff I wanted to discuss as well. I'm kind of pulling up my paper. Cloud computing is going to be when you are dealing with data, when you're storing any information or work online. It's usually, there are different organizations that offer different services. There are different companies that do it. And they usually have servers, and they're kind of hosting your work, and they're storing your information on their servers, as opposed to it being stored on your local device, like on your personal computer. If you come in here to the assignment page, there are a few examples. Google Docs is a really well-known one and a really widely used one, but that's not the only one by any means, and it's not the only one you have to talk about for this assignment. There are lots of different services where you could do your work and store it online, and there are lots of services where you might save your data digitally, for example, like Dropbox or OneDrive. So the paper will be 3 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, you answer these 6 questions about whichever tool you decide to use, and each one is worth 5 points. So just, go back and double check and make sure that you've addressed each one. I have asked you to have just a little bit of a heading, at least just your name. Our class is CMPS 1023. And then the second paragraph wants you to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of cloud storage as opposed to storing things on your personal device. So some advantages. One, it saves space on your personal device. Some people that are storing a whole lot of information, you might not have room for it all on your computer, on your laptop. If you're working off of a cell phone, especially, you're going to have limited storage there. So being able to save things online means that you don't have to provide that storage yourself, which is nice. And also, a lot of these services are free. For example, Google Docs versus Microsoft Word. If it's free for you to store things, in Google Drive, as opposed to having to pay for extra storage if you were having to do it locally. For example, having to buy like flash drives, USBs, or an external hard drive or something like that. Collaboration is a big one, and how easy it is to share with others. So for example, when I make the YouTube videos, when I make the videos for this class and I store it, I upload it to YouTube, and then I can just send the link. And it's very easy for me to share that link with all of you, as opposed to if this was a file that I have stored locally and I'm trying to upload the actual video file onto D2L, and then for you guys to watch it, you might need to download it and have it stored there on your personal computer and run it that way. It's much easier to share information with others if it's hosted online. You don't have to worry about compatibility issues, like if you have different operating systems. So like I'm working right now on a Dell. If I'm writing things in Microsoft Word and I upload that content to you guys and you're using a Mac, you might have some compatibility issues there with different operating systems. So it's really nice when you have something that's web-based and you can just share it and it works for anybody as long as you have access to the internet. And it doesn't matter what kind of device you're on. Autosave is a nice feature of a lot of online tools. When you're working in the cloud, a lot of things will save automatically for you. That is not always the case when you're working on your personal device. So that's a big one. Yeah, I think that's going to be, oh, and then of course, accessibility, like if you're working on an assignment and you work on it at home and it is stored at home, you know, if you have it stored locally on a personal computer and then you go up to MSU, you don't have access to that file, right? Because it's only available on that device. So you don't have it anywhere else. And that could be really inconvenient if you're having to work from other places. It's a big risk if anything happens to the device you have it stored on. If for any reason it's damaged or lost or stolen, like for example, if you had your work saved to your laptop and only your laptop, and then something happened to that device, you would just lose anything that you had saved onto it. As opposed to if things were stored on the cloud, it's a little bit safer in the sense of it being backed up and available from anywhere and not just tied to one machine. So some of the advantages are going to be storage, the ability to share with others, accessibility, compatibility, running on multiple different operating systems, autosave, collaboration, cost. Those are just a few of the ones that I have written down here. I'm sure there are others, and you're welcome to include any of the advantages you would like in your paper. Some of the disadvantages that I have to talk about could be like privacy concerns. Whenever you're working online, it's really easy for companies to track what you're doing. And honestly, guys, it doesn't matter. Like I know some people will take some measures to try and be a little more anonymous. Like maybe you use like DuckDuckGo as your web browser, or sometimes people like to turn on like incognito to try and keep, from being tracked across different websites. You can be identified just based on, the machine that you're on. The companies can tell what other websites you have visited, how long you spend on them, how often you visit. Like there's so much information that's out there, and it all kind of just comes back to advertising. If a service is free, a lot of times they're going to make their money based on ads. And how do you make the most money on ads? You have this really fantastic like targeting for your audience. You need to know data on your audience to be able to get the most clicks. Because if you know what somebody likes and what they're most likely to click on and see, then you can show that content to them, and then you make more money. It's usually what it comes back to. These are businesses, right? They're companies. Another thing is going to be security. It's going to be more. You're going to be more susceptible to large amounts of data, like large data centers. There's a greater risk of them maybe being like targeted by a hacker as opposed to your personal device, just because the payoff is larger, right? If somebody can get into, you hear online about different large companies who's, have had like a security breach. Like a hacker is going to be able to get a lot more valuable information off of attacking large companies like that, as opposed to what they can get off of like just your laptop. So there is the security concern. And then sometimes there are costs associated. Sometimes you have ongoing subscriptions for web-based services. Companies are smart. They're fantastic at getting as much money out of you as they possibly can. So for some things like Microsoft Word, you might have had to pay a lot of money to buy that software, but you only had to purchase it one time and that's it. As opposed to now, a lot of online services require like a monthly subscription, and you might be like, oh, well, it's $5 a month. That's not bad. But then you've only had it for 1 year and you've already spent $60 on this. Whereas, sometimes when you purchase something and you have the site license to it just there on your device, you only had to buy it one time. It's not an ongoing subscription like a lot of web-based services these days are. So costs can be positive and negative. You could have lower costs from like taking advantage of free storage that's available. But then you might have higher cost if it's a cloud-based computing service that you are paying a monthly fee for. And then this one, I did not know until recently, the copyright concerns. So before teaching at MSU, I was a high school teacher for 10 years and we were Google everything. Google was a huge push at our school. We used Google Drive for everything, Google Classroom for everything. Everybody was on Gmail. It was like Google everything. And so I came to MSU and I had a lot of my work saved in Google. And whenever we went through like the training, when I got hired here, they said you're not allowed just to use Google Docs or Google Drive, anything for a lot of the stuff that's used at the school. And some of it is due to security and privacy issues. And some of it is due to copyright issues. Copyright is a big disadvantage that I was not aware of until just about a year ago. So if you read in the terms and conditions, a lot of these cloud-based services do say that they can retain copyright to any material that you create using their services. And for that reason, if you are like doing research, so I'm pursuing my PhD right now. I'm working on a PhD in computer science and engineering at UNT. And we were told, you know, when I went down to UNT, we were told you are not allowed to store any of your data, any of your original data that you have for your own research on Google Drive. It all has to be stored on like Dropbox or OneDrive or something that UNT had paid for and that we had that we could retain the rights to it. And Google Drive is a free service and they don't guarantee that. So that was something that I wasn't aware of, but there is kind of a trade-off between free services and when you're paying for it, yes, it's free, but then what's in it for the company to provide that to you for free? A lot of times it comes from tracking your activity and then, you know, using that data to increase ads. And sometimes there are other things that might be in the fine print that you need to pay careful attention to as well. So that was kind of all the main advantages and disadvantages that I had thought of or talked about, and I'm sure there are plenty more that you could talk about as well. If you look at the rubric for this assignment, I believe to get full credit for paragraph 2, I'm looking for 6 total advantages and disadvantages. So for example, if you had like 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages, then that would be 6 total and you would get full points for paragraph 2. And then in paragraph 3, I would be interested to hear about what you personally do. Do you think that it is safe to use online tools? Do you personally use them? And, you know, if so, which ones? I absolutely still use Google. I use it all the time. I just have to be mindful that now I can't use it for my research information, for my doctoral work. And I can't use it to store any information that has anything to do with student information for my job at MSU. So I can't have anything in my Google Drive that has like student names or anything that might be confidential information. And that's because of the security risk. So the whole paper should be pretty brief. I'm looking for something about like half a page to 1 page long. And there is a rubric in D2L. You can go through and see how points are allotted for each one. So it should be pretty clear how things are being graded. And if you have any questions over the assignment, feel free to email me, or you can come to, I'm gonna have another Zoom meeting tomorrow. I think probably between 6 and 7 p.m. is when I'll be online then. Try to catch some people. So far, the only responses have been afternoon and evening. No one has said mornings. So I had one in the afternoon today, and I'll try to have one in the evening tomorrow. And I hope to see some of you then.